if you're trying to get a great bass sound, you can absolutely do it using just a DI. Some people like to use a DI and an amp, but a lot of guys will tell you, like Chad Blake, that he prefers to use just the DI. Chris Lord-Alge said that a lot also, that he can get it all from a DI, especially if the amp and the DI don't sound beautiful together, because a lot of times they don't. So unless you get the phase perfect and the mics really complement each other, and there's no, there's a lot of anomalies that could happen as soon as you put mics up in a room and then try to match that with a DI signal. So just let's focus on just the DI bass sound for the moment, because like Chad Blake, I also tend to prefer just using a DI these days. Now, there's not one way to do this. There's several ways to do this, but let me show you what I did in this song. This is actually a cover of Sade Adu's No Ordinary Love. It's done by the band Walking Through Ghosts. I produced it and I'm playing bass on it. So check this out, then I'll talk about how I got it. Okay, so here we go. This bass sound, this is how it was achieved. We have the bass track. First of all, what's going on in the outboard world? I'm sending the bass directly into a BAE 1073 EQ. So that is both the DI, where the physical jack from the bass cord is plugged into, and it has EQ on it. So I'm using a nice amount of saturation on the input signal with a lowered output signal to be able to get the bass a little saturated going in. That's first off. Then I'm hitting an 1176 style compressor, also in the outboard world. Then I'm headed in through my Burl converters. Now, just that right there, the bass sounds pretty good. But once you get a lot of, distortion, heavy drums, a lot of things happening in a dense mix, you're going to want to do more to pull the bass out of the speakers, in my opinion. If it was a song that was very sparse with not a lot going on, and especially not a lot of need for that, grime and grit, the good stuff, right? If there's not a lot of need for that, you could do a lot less of this. But let me just sort of show you what's going on over here. This is the bass track. Now there's one bass track, that's all. Some people will duplicate that to do different processing on different bass tracks, whereas I send it to 3 different parallel buses. Now, I kind of explained recently how Brower does his Browerize thing. I am not using that style when I'm doing this. These are the extent of where the bass goes. The bass goes to these 3 things, and this gets sent out to my summing. I'm sending the drums out through the Burl converters right into the summing, but on the drums, there are no buses in action. This is the drums. There's nothing that these are hitting other than the summing. They're going directly from the tracks straight to the summing. And I did that video yesterday if you want to check that out. So what we have going on for the bass, this one bass track is sending to 3 different places. Now, these 3 things have all 3 different jobs, okay? One of them is going to focus on the low end. That's this one on the bottom. This is just giving us this boomy, bassy low end. The one on the middle is what I call kind of like the Andy Wallace bus. It's basically going to give you that wide, wobbly kind of, interesting sound of like a chorus on the bass. And that just has a way of adding presence and personality, especially when you're dealing with distorted tracks and stuff that's kind of dense where you need it to cut through. Very helpful to create a little movement by using a track like that. And then this one right here is like the grit, the neck part of the bass, like really all the definition. Because if you break your bass into these 3 things, the low end, that little bit of shimmery wobble in the modulation, and then the neck part where the definition is, that's really all you need. And if you need more definition, you turn that fader up on top. If you need more of the wobble and the sheen, the shine, you turn the middle up. If you need more of the low end, you turn this one up. So let's just break it down. Now on the bass itself, before we get into all these and what's on them, we have a distressor. That's the first thing that I put on it in the box. Now I'm going to play it for you with and without these things so you can hear kind of how I built it in. I'll take everything off, and then I'm going to add them one at a time. Okay, now that comes in pretty hot because the reason I do that, if you send in a level that's kind of hot to a distressor, what will wind up happening is once it sits around 10, 9, 8, the saturation is taking effect that is built into the distressor. The distressor has a tendency to sound saturated once you get up in the 7, 8, 9, 10 zone. That's why I think why they make it yellow. But when the signal's sitting here, you don't get as much of it. And then once it gets up in here, you get a little of that harmonic saturation that I like, okay? Also, you should note that the attack is, if 0 is the fastest attack on here. It's very close to 0. So it's cutting down on the transients so that we can get this thick sounding smushed bass sound that just is more consistent. And in the same token, the release is on the slower side. Now I slowed it down a lot because I like the bass to sound very consistent. I don't want it to come and go and disappear on me. So slow release, fast attack. Over here, the detector circuit, I have the high pass on, which basically means it takes this out of the detector circuit. But on the audio channel side, I have the high pass on also. If you were to want more bass in your signal, then don't put this high pass on the audio side. Just turn the detector on with the high pass. As soon as you put this high pass on the audio side, you are rolling off a little bit of low end, but that's okay for me because I put it back with this low channel here that has the super low end, this is my low end boom channel, this bottom one. It has R bass on it. That's going to put a lot of that back in sort of a way that worked better for me. So that's why I do it this way. Now, I don't always do it this way. It's just what worked for this song. Now I'm going to turn on the 4KB. Now on the 4KB, okay, this is what we have going on here. I'm boosting a lot of 1.5K. And I'm talking about 15 dB. Crystal or algae style, like why not boost, all of it? There you go. So another 14.5 dB boost around 760 hertz, okay, 760 hertz at a super wide Q. I'm boosting another 15 dB around 600 hertz because in my opinion, it needed it to cut through. And because the bass is sort of running this song, like if you listen to Sade Adu's No Ordinary Love, that bass line is iconic. And in this song, I felt like it helped a lot to have the bass sort of run it, to be a forceful force propelling this thing forward like a motor. And then I'm just boosting a little bit of low end with the bell on, 4 dB at 135 hertz. Okay, so if you notice over here, I lowered this a lot because you notice the signal's pretty hot with just the distressor on. I lowered this a lot on the output. And I'm adding 10-to-1 compression on this also. So even more flattening happening. A fast release, 10-to-1, and I messed with the threshold till I got this thing jumping around 10, 14 dBs of gain reduction. So check this out. That's with the distressor and the SSL 4KB now. I'll turn it off, then I'll flip it on. Here we go. Off, now on. See, without it, it's just too much low end in there. So I turn this on, and now I'm building my bass sound in a way that, to me, this was cutting through the track. Now, this is with everything on. Keep in mind, all the buses are on. So now let me throw on the decapitator, because I have a decapitator after the 4KB, and the decapitator has mid-driver on. This is one of the presets on there. I may have manipulated it a little bit afterwards. I'm not really sure, but this is just going to dirty it up a little bit more. Because the more, if you put a little dirt on the bass, it will cut through, especially when you have a song that's got a lot of stuff happening, a dense mix, and it's already a dirty sounding song. The bass, having a little drive on that bass really helps. Here we go. That's with the decapitator. This is without it. This is with it. This is without it. So it just adds a little bit of grime to it, a little dirt grime, which we like. So leaving those on, now we're going to get to the next one, which is this ATR 102. Now this, it's a tape machine. Now, tape machines are complicated. I could do an entire video just on tape machines. But for the moment, let's just show you the setting I have going on with this. And if you just flip through the presets over here, this will help you out a lot if you don't understand your tape machine, like what it's doing. Just by flipping through some nice presets here, you can really just mess with what's happening a lot. Listen to what happens when I add the tape. It basically takes a signal that, in my opinion, sounds kind of flubby and just tightens it all up like it went to the gym for 7 months straight every day. Like, check this out. So that's on. This is off. This is with it on. This is off. This is on. So that's another one that I liked a lot. I love a good tape plugin. I mean, honestly, love it. Now here we go. Vulf Comp, another one of my favorites. I'll play it without it first, then I'll add it. Vulf Comp is another one of these sort of colorful compressors, and I have a tendency to stack compressors when I'm getting a sound on bass. Now, also, where I put them is key. In other words, over here, it's just the low-end rumble, that middle sheeny, modulated chorusy sound, and then the neck definition of the bass. But over here, this is how forward the bass will be before all those things take effect, because that's all that's happening. The bass goes from here to these channels go out of the computer to the summing. So that's really all that's happening in terms of work, routing and workflow. So here we go. I'm gonna turn. This is with it off. This is with it on. This is with it off. This is with it on. It just adds a little more personality. Now, this thing should be called the Cult of Personality, because this is probably my favorite plugin on bass. It's my favorite plugin on a couple things, but especially bass. It's just, there's something about it that sounds awesome. So just check this out. It's the vintage oral exciter. This is the Waves version. Here we go. It's off. It's on. It's off. It's on. It's off. It's on. Now, by themselves, when you're listening in without the music playing, it may be hard to hear what's happening, but let me just turn these off and then go one at a time through it, just as we just did, all right? So you can hear it with the music playing. Just a distressor. Distressor on 4KB. Distressor 4KB and decapitator. Distressor 4KB decapitator and the tape machine ATR 102. Now we add the Vulf Comp. Now the 8 effects vintage oral exciter. Listen with and without the oral exciter. Now with You may think that's subtle. It all depends on your listening environment. It's a little subtle, but to me, it's actually a lot of subtle. I mean, it ain't so subtle, if you ask me. It just gives you more body. All right, so that's that. Now let's go through the rest here. We got down here, I just want to kind of show you what it sounds like as soon as we take off some of this. Let's take off. Let's give you just the definition one. This is just the definition here. You ready? Here we have an MV2, okay, MV2 and a Soothe 2. Now the Soothe 2 is sidechain to the kick. That's what bus 7 is. So bus 7 being the kick means it's ducking this slightly every time the kick hits just to give the kick room to breathe. It's not like working as a compressor, more as it's just ducking when the kick is there. So now let's take out the MV2. Listen with and without the MV2. The MV2 is what I call like bring it to the front. That's really all it's doing. Here we go. Okay, that's off. Now with the MV2. See what I'm saying? It just brings it to the front. Take the MV2 off. Clearly there's a little level difference here, but the bottom line is I needed it to come to the front, so I didn't need to level match to see what's happening here. I just turned the MV2 on and I brought it to the front. Now, what else we got here is this middle zone. The middle one is that kind of wobbly Andy Wallace chorusy sound. Check it out. This is actually a free plugin. This Valhalla Space Modulator is free, and it sounds amazing. So if you want to get a little bit of that sheeny wobble, make sure you're on symphonic mode, and then, you know, you could copy these settings if you want. But this thing, plus the Kramer tape. Listen without the tape. The tape does a lot. With the tape. Without the tape. It feels like it's going like this. If you're listening in headphones, the bass is going like this, which just makes it more interesting. That's the way I look at something like this. Really cool plugin, and when you add the tape to it, the tape makes it have sort of more body, you know, just so you could hear more of what's going on. It's not like it's not bumping 12 dB at, you know, 80 hertz or 60 hertz. Not doing anything like that. It's just giving you more of it because it's a bass. We want to hear this thing not sounding super tinny and thin and small. This wobbly sound takes up a little more of the body when you add the tape to it. So that's with it and without the tape. Now let's listen to the R bass. Clearly, we know this is the lows and subs. So as soon as I take this off, also the L2 is doing nothing. It's just, I leave this on just in case anything gets crazy. A stray peak rather, will come out and, you know, slap your ears off. Instead, we just leave this Pro L2 on and that doesn't happen. But in this case, the signal's not getting close to it because the right blend made it where this wasn't that hot. So here we go. R bass. I'm lowering the gain significantly on this. A lot of times that's what I'll do. Like I'll keep the volume fader. Like if you notice, this is just sitting at -4.9, but I didn't move this to make this low end fit in this mix. I moved this. I'm adjusting how hot this is to get it, because this is basically the output control. And then you don't have to worry about it. Then the blend is right, so you can make the bass entirely loud by moving all three at once at that point. Okay, so let's come over here. Let's just check it out with and without it. That's with R bass. That's without it. That's with R bass. Crazy, huh? we can put in that much low end. So you never have to worry about rolling off a little low end with a distressor or something, because if it tames everything out where now you can control it by putting only low end on its own track, that may be super helpful for you. And that's what happened here. So when you combine all these together, you get this. If you took off any one of these, if you take off any one at any point, like just taking off the Vulf Comp, it's gonna, like, I'll just pull these out randomly so you could see they're all sort of serving a very critical purpose, especially like the 4KB. If I didn't boost those 15 dB zones in, like, you know, the 600, 700-ish range, and at, like, you know, that top one, the top boost, 15 dB up here at 1.5K, that is critical to bring out that sound of the bass. If you don't do that, you never hear the bass. The bass sound gets heard by not boosting 80 hertz. Don't boost 80, 60, you know, down there to get the bass heard. This is a very minimal boost at 4 dB with a little bell on it, and that's even a little atypical for me. But I felt after the distressor and other things, it kind of needed it because it was a little thin. That's the thing. You sometimes have to take what you've got and break it down in order to make it build back into what you want. It's not, like I said, it's not always the way it'll work. You could change. You could do this on 100 songs and not one would be the same twice. All right. So a lot of people use chorus on the bass, but using it in this way, or put it on its own channel, it helps a lot. It's better than affecting all the channels with it, because you want your low end to be clean and not have this on it, in my opinion. And you want the top, you know, the sheeny, or not the sheeny, the neck part with the definition to not have it on it either, just so you could get a little more or less definition without it affecting how wobbly stuff is. So, I mean, that's really the reason I split it up, so I can make this as loud as I need and keep this as loud as I need and keep the low end as loud as I need. That's the reason. I hope you dug it. I hope you got something from it. If you did, do me a favor, throw something in the comments, anything, whether you liked it, didn't like it, some tips maybe you do about the bass, what you like to use. Love to hear it. All right, talk to you guys soon. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. You guys got this. Take it easy.